What is up, everyone? Welcome to round 4 of the Portland Monthly Premodern Paper Magic Afternoons August 2024 tournament. We've got a returning deck and also just a really rad deck to show you. So without further ado, let's get into the deck list. First up, we have Chuck on Goblins, but it's not the usual mono red or red green Goblins. No, this is actually red black Goblins. Now I know this isn't a fully unique list, but it is still really cool. Basically, you are running Living Deaths as a way to get back all your Goblins, and you're running a few more sack effects than you would normally. One cool card I want to call out specifically is Goblin Pyromancer, which is a 4-drop. When ETBs, all Goblins get +3/+0 to end of turn, and at end of turn, destroy all Goblins. If you can sack this card before the end of turn, all your Goblins still stay on the board. Very cool tech. Other than that, I do want to call out the awesome silver bordering of his deck. Chuck has been working hard to, well, technically white border, but since all of the cards are foil, it is silver bordering all of his cards. Overall, I can't wait to see how this deck performs, so let's see who he's playing against. Well, Saul is back with his mono black control list. This isn't quite pit rack like I mentioned in the previous video where we covered this deck. It is a bit of a mishmash of a few things. Yes, he does have ensnaring bridges. Yes, he does have racks. He's also running creatures like the hippies and the Cabal interrogators and even a few skittering scourges, I believe, including more creatures in the side, including grinning demons, which are pretty rad. Overall, this just seems like a mismatch of his favorite black control cards, and it's been working pretty well for him. I think this deck is actually undefeated going into this point, so very cool to see, and I wish him luck. Let's see how the games play out. And here we go. We have Chuck on the left, Saul on the right. We'll roll off here to see who goes first. Looks like Chuck will be taking the play, which is pretty huge for such an aggressive deck like Goblins. And yep, it's all realizing I think that there was big dice for life total. No reason to use the little d20. Interesting. Saul does have a Dark Ritual start into an Ensnaring Bridge, which could be pretty big against Goblins. Goblins don't really have a way main deck to answer Artifact Hate. I did see some Artifact interaction in Chuck's side, though, I believe. Some other interesting tech, actually, that I didn't call out in the deck tech. There is a 3-mana colorless red and black enchantment. Alright, looks like both players are keeping. I'm just gonna play Baron War, so no explosive start from Saul. But there's a pretty explosive start from Chuck. Can you answer a turn 1 Goblin Lackey? And I didn't see... Oh no, he's got a Funeral Charm. Yeah, he can answer it. Yeah, anyway, sorry. Answer to Engineer Plague in red-black Goblins. It's Dralnu's... not Crusade. It's something. It starts with Dralnu. It's a enchantment from Odyssey block, I want to say. I'm going to pull it up here while Saul goes through his turn. I think he's first going to Duress here. He does have a Duress and a Blackmail. Blackmail honestly might be a better option. Duressing a Goblin deck is not always the best, especially game 1. And he is not hitting anything, I believe, but does get a good look at the hand. Oh, it is Dralnu's Crusade. Yeah, sorry. All Goblins get +1/+1, and they are black and zombies in addition to their creature type. Anyways, this functionally just negates an Engineered Plague. So, kind of cool tech. He does have a couple of those on the side. Alright, so what do we have here? We have a Gem Palm Incinerator. A few other things that I missed while I was looking up the cards. That's fine. We've got a newer Goblin too. Well, not new necessarily, but one that you don't see super often. And it does look like his mana base is kind of painful. Alright, we're going to play out the Goblin's Letter. This is a free sack outlet. Oh, that Goblin Lackey is going to get Funeral Charmed here. There might have been a misplay from Saul, unless he's doing it on the cast. No, he's doing it on the attack. So this Goblin Slider is actually going to save the Lackey, which is unfortunate. That will resolve. The Lackey will hit. Maybe not fully understanding what the Slider's capabilities were. And we're getting a Skirk Prospector into play. Not the biggest hit you can get off of a Lackey for sure. Especially since you could have just played it out next turn, but I guess maybe holding up interactive spells. The Goblins deck does run 2 Diabolic Edicts, I believe, in the main, so there are potential duress targets. Okay, we're gonna fetch here. The fetches are purely just to get Threshold for Cabal Pit in Saul's deck, by the way. I don't think there's anything else that cares about Threshold. Which, if you run enough Cabal Pits, I could see being potentially relevant, but it's also a pain land that hurts you, and this is a deck that pretty consistently wants to have at least 3 mana. Oh, this is the Goblin Pyromancer. Okay. I didn't recognize the art at first. This is the one that pumps up all goblins +3/+0. And then at the end of turn, if it's still around, you have to sack all your goblins. So this seems like a pretty good opportunity for an Ensnaring Bridge. Yes, okay, we are going to see that. And then a Blackmail. And then he does have a Phyrexian Furnace, so he can slow this game down a lot. Alright, looks like Chuck is just giving him the cards he knows about. We'll get rid of the Gem Balm Incinerator. And Phyrexian Furnace go. Tap the Furnace, hit the bottom card. Alright, so 0 cards in hand for Saul, which means that Ensnaring Bridge is working as intended. Nothing can get through. And all Chuck can do is pass. Oh, let's try not to draw 2 cards. How about a second Ensnaring Bridge? Oof. Well, that is going to be rough. Saul still doesn't have a lock on the board. And one of the problems with running racks but no continuous discard like Bottomless Pits is your opponent can just keep playing stuff out, or hold stuff in hand, I should say. So he's going to need to start conserving resources to finish this game at some point, but I think we are settling in for the long haul here. Unless we get to a card that he cannot cast. Now, Chuck does have another out with the Siege Gangs, being able to deal enough damage that way. But beyond that, I don't know of another good out necessarily. He can't win through combat currently, which is the Goblin's main plan. Alright, there is the Siege Gang. This actually does help quite a bit. Saul is only at 15. Every goblin represents 2 points of damage. Comes in making 3. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 damage currently represented on the board for Saul. It may, or for Chuck. It may take a minute for that to happen. Several turns, in fact. And if a removal spell comes down for that Siege Gang Lieutenant, that's going to be a problem. But right now, Chuck top decked the card he needed. That's another Funeral Charm. Yes, you can hit one of the goblins, which does represent 2 damage. I think you do want to do that now, just because your opponent is tapped out. And so I'll make sure there's nothing going to be in Chuck's graveyard, which is actually relevant for this deck running recursion for goblins. And Chuck is just going to pass. Granted, none of those goblins could get through the double ensnaring bridge, so that is somewhat relevant. Alright, that's an overburden. It's just have your opponent discard 2 cards. Alright, gonna get rid of that. That's a Shadow Blood bridge. Cracking the mire here. Getting, I imagine, just another mountain. Maybe he wants a swamp just to have a black source that doesn't hurt him. Yeah, there you go. Makes sense. And now we're gonna start sacking some goblins, I imagine. Oh, no, not gonna go with the swamp. Ground the mountain, just to, I guess, to be able to sack as much stuff as possible without having to dip into the pain lands. And that doesn't make sense, because it is 2, 1 and a red to sack a goblin, deal 2 damage. So 3 goblins can be sacked right now. Are we just going to see all 3 sacked? I imagine so. I don't think there's any other really good win con. No, we're actually not using any of the mana. Interesting. Why not do that on end step? Is there an out in his deck that I missed that could potentially get through ensnaring bridges? He does have a Goblin Tinkerer, but there's only 1 in the main. Address. Not much. Alright, we are going to start sacking goblins here. I'm just looking through Chuck's list real quick to see if there's anything else. I don't think so. Mog Fanatics could help get across the line if the War Marshal, or the Siege Gang Commander, sorry, is dealt with. But yeah, the only artifact destruction I see is the one of Tinkerer. And yes, you can Living Death that back, but with a Phyrexian Furnace on the field, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Alright, it's all down to 7. Say go. Or sorry, that was in Saul's end step. Gonna take some points from the rack. The rack is now actually relevant. Let's play out a War Chief. Goblin spells cost 1 less to cast as haste, but it's really just another potential sack outlet. And Saul's just gonna stay go. He's got the rack as his win con right now. Chuck taking 2 from that. And Chuck's just gonna pass. That is another rack. That will definitely speed up the process, assuming he can get cards out of hand. I'm not sure what's in Saul's hand. It might be an Edict. And Chuck might be playing around the fact that Saul might have an Edict. Chuck has definitely played against my Pit Rack deck enough to know that my primary removals are Edict effects. And not wanting to get rid of his one path to victory right now makes a ton of sense. Alright, there's a blackmail. Okay, so Chuck also, or Saul also has an unmask. Oh, speaking of Edict effects, Chuck has 2. This is the new art. And that is going to get hit. And Chuck going to be taking 2 here as he moves to his draw step. Notably, Saul has 1 card in hand. Alright, there's a ringleader. Ringleader is big. See if we can hit some more goblins. There's a living death. And is that another siege gang? No, it's a gem palm incinerator. Okay. So I'll just want to take a quick look at living death. Pretty fun card, especially in a deck that wants to sack a lot of its creatures for value or mana or that sort of thing. It does cost 5 mana. You exile. It's also a pseudo board wipe. You exile all creature cards from graveyard and sack all creatures that control, then put all cards exiled onto the battlefield. So kind of like Living End, except without the cascade cheats. Alright, that's another rack, and that is not great for Saul. He really needs to find ways to get cards out of Chuck's hand, as that's the only way he's going to win. Chuck now representing 6 damage with the Siege Gang. It's all at 7. That Gem Palm Incinerator also could just represent another 2 by playing it. One of the few times you'd actually want to play a Gem Palm Incinerator. Alright, so I'll crack in the Phyrexian Furnace, actually exiling one of his own cards. There's a Relentless Rats, I think, which is not going to be good enough. But he does need to play something. Alright, he's going to unmask here, hit the Gem Palm Incinerator. I'm assuming. Unmask one of those free pitch spells. And yeah, Incinerator is going to go. And play another rack. Take 3. I think Chuck drops down to 5. No, to 8, I think. Yeah. But before he pass turn, sacking a goblin. And if that's a goblin, I think Chuck just has it. Assuming it's a 1-drop. Although he does have a land in hand too, so it could be a 2-drop, and still would be fine. Alright, that is a Tinkerer. That is what he was looking for before. That's a way to get rid of the ensnaring bridges, but again, you need 2 Tinkerers to do that. Alright, 2 to you, 2 more to you, and finally, the remaining 2. And we are going to game number 2. Alright, well, Chuck had one path to victory, and he was able to get it. Now, post-sideboard, he does actually have a few more answers. He doesn't have any more Tinkerers, surprisingly. He has a couple of crashes, though, which could be relevant. And I have to imagine the Dralnu's Crusades are also coming in, because Saul has Engineered Plagues, and I imagine that is the primary thing he brought in. I'll be interested to see what else he decides is worth citing in as well. He does have a Funeral Charm in hand, and a rack, and some discard. This seems like a keepable hand to me. Alright. Gonna crack, go get a swamp. I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. I'm not a huge fan of these fetches just for Cabal Pit. If there's something else with Threshold that I'm just totally missing, then I think that's a little bit better, but you're losing life to cater to a land that loses you life, which generally I feel like you don't really want to have more than 1, maybe 2 of in a mono black deck. At least this is where I've been comfortable with with Cabals. All right, we have a blackmail coming down. Really interesting card, really fun card. Your opponent actually picks 3 cards to show to you. It can hit lands, and that's exactly what Chuck's going to show him, all lands. I almost wonder if you hit the Phyrexian Tower. No, we're going to hit a red source here. Might as well. I mean, the Bloodstained Mire can go get whatever, but I get it. It is a little bit of damage, could be relevant. That's what's going to happen. Alright, we are grabbing a mountain here. Meanwhile, I am scrolling for anything with Threshold in the Sol's deck that is not the 3 of Cabal Pits. Alright, we got a Skirk Prospector coming down past you. Not a great target for the Funeral Charm, but not awful. If a lot of Goblins come down, it could be fairly relevant, I guess. Caltrops are actually in Sol's sideboard, and that could be super relevant. That one, for all of you that don't know, it's a 3-drop artifact. Whenever a creature attacks, Caltrops deals 1 damage to it. So it definitely negates a lot of the smaller Goblins that could be swinging in, just in case the Ensnaring Bridge gets answered. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything else that cares about Threshold in Sol's deck. So if you're watching this eventually, I would consider taking out the fetches. If you want to leave the 3 Cabal Pits in there just for kicks, I get it. Alright, so that Skirk is going to get Funeral Charmed. And do we have a Wasteland coming down? Looks like it. Yep. That is a Proxy Wasteland, one of the promos from the... Was it the last Premodern meetup? Might have been the one before that. We have a member, a regular, actually Joe, who I think was on this month as well, who does proxies for the community for sometimes free, sometimes just a really low rate, which is super cool. We are a proxy-friendly tournament. Don't really care to play against people's wallets as long as we can tell what the cards are and the game is fun. That's all that matters. Alright, we got a pile driver. Not swinging in yet. Doesn't have haste right now. But that could represent a lot of damage next turn. One thing I need to remind myself is the pile driver. Does that trigger on attacks? Might. Alright, we have an Unburden coming down. Choosing not to play out the bridge. And that land that's all played is a Wrath's Edge, I believe. Adds a colorless mana, or you can pay 4 to have it deal 3 damage to a target creature or player. Kind of cool tech. Honestly, I might even like that better than 3 Cabal Pits for late game. Obviously, it doesn't make black, which is not great in a very black heavy deck. Oh, okay. We're going to sack the pile driver. Make 2 black. Let's play out a ringleader. Open for some big hits here, I think. There's another pile driver. There's a lackey. There's a Skirk Prospector. Not too shabby. 3 out of 4. And we are going to get in for 2. Yeah, 3 out of 4 hits on a ringleader is always a good time. Ooh, all right. We've got a creature in Sol's hand. Skittering Scourge. This is a 3/2 flyer. You have to sacrifice it whenever you cast another creature spell. Notably doesn't care if you manage to cheat creatures into play. But instead we're going to unburden here. Try and get some of the goblins out of Chuck's hand. Mitigate the sheer amount of value of that ringleader. He does have to discard 2. Yes. There is a reason why you're paying 3 mana for that. You can also cycle it for 2. And notably, Chuck will take a point of damage now from the rack. I almost wonder if you keep the lackey in. Pile driver being able to swing it is pretty huge though. Okay. I'm very curious as to what his face down card is. And Saul tapped out, we'll say go. Take a point, untap the ringleader. Makes me think maybe his face down card was War Chief. But no, we're just gonna swing in for 2. Tap 1. Play out the Mog Fanatic. Tap 2, play out the Pile Driver. Alright. Whole bunch of gobos on Chuck's side. Okay. Drawing a Dark Ritual, I believe. Dark Ritual into the bridge makes a lot of sense. And then you can play out the Skittering Scourge as well, just as a blocker. 1 black floating. Use that 1 black and 2 others and play out the bridge. And now does Chuck have artifact removal in hand? Alright, taking 2 from the rack. I'm just going to pass. One of those cards in hand is a land. Is that a hippie? I think Saul did just draw a hippie. Might as well play it out. Nope, it's going to pass. Okay. I think keeping cards in hand is kind of dangerous, with the Ensnaring Bridge especially. There's a Silveric Vortex. Now, both players are going to start taking 2 every turn. Notably, your opponent takes 2 first, which is going to be super relevant. He is now 1 less than Chuck. And Chuck has a Mog Fanatic too, so he can get in for 1. So, potentially, Chuck is able to win the race here, but that is a second rack. And Chuck will be taking 4, 2 from the racks combined, and 2 from the Silveric Vortex. So suddenly losing the race by quite a bit. But that Mog Fanatic can technically get in. I mean, it can't attack through the Skittering Scourge, but... Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, so this actually is part of the question. The Pile Driver, when it attacks... Yes, okay, so it can still attack because it's a 1-2. It is going to trade with Skittering Scourge. Saul's going to take 1. Did he take the 2? No, he hasn't yet. It's not his turn. Okay, sorry. Alright, we got a Goblin Matron. I imagine we are getting Siege Gang to help close this out sooner. But even another Pile Driver would be pretty good. Assuming Saul has to keep this 1 card in hand, which, again, I'm not sure what it is. It's either a Hypnotic Spectre, which should get played out, or it's a Unmask, I guess. Or do we get a Goblin Tinkerer to free up the board? Maybe Goblin Tinkerer, actually. And that's what he does have pulled to the front right now. That does make a lot of sense. Okay. Granted, he does have to wait a turn for this to activate. So he is going to get pretty low. Although technically will not take damage next turn if Saul cannot interact with his hand. Remember, take 2. Both players at 10. Chuck back to winning this race. And that is a Hypnotic Spectre. You should just play that out. Yeah, you don't need the Mog Fanatic getting in. And it is another blocker, just in case something happens. Say go. If Saul does draw another land, we may see that that Risk Edge actually being put to use. Chuck gonna take 2 here, drops to 8. 3 in hand, so no damage from the rack. Now what is in hand? Alright, Tinkerer hits the field. Makes sense. Chuck reminding him, take 2. And oh, that's the is that Volrath's Purge or something, or Hunger, something like that. Anyways, that's I believe deal 2, gain 2. Very clutch right now. And all of a sudden Saul is back to winning the race. There's a Goblin Sharpshooter that is able to deal some damage. Although I think that only hits creatures, so not super relevant currently. Oh no, it does hit players. Sorry, my mistake. All right, take 2 off of the Vortex. Oh, and also you couldn't have gained life off the Volrath's Hunger. There's an Engineered Plague. That's pretty big. That is unfortunate for Chuck to see so late in the game. He can sack the Mog Fanatic, taking Saul down to 5. But currently, Chuck is still losing this race. All right, draws for turn. And thinking about his play here, it seems like he needs another land. He does need to find a way to deal basically 3 damage in this turn or next turn. Otherwise, he's going to lose.
I think I'm safe from a Mog Fanatic, right? Because it dies as a state-based ability, and you can't sack it.
And I wish I could tell better what's in his hand. He does have a Siege Gang, but all those goblins are going to die. But does it matter? He does have to play out an extra land to play the Siege Gang. I think that's what he's debating currently. Right, because even with the... Wait, no, that's a Ringleader. Yeah, so he does actually have to play out 2 more lands. Unless he sacks the Ringleader Okay, land for turn. Nope. Trying to do some math here. Coming up a little short. That E-Plague really shutting the deck down. And this is why the red-green Goblins deck is the most popular of the few, or of the three options. Just having Naturalize as a way to deal with Engineer Plague, which is arguably, I would say, the biggest threat for Goblins, besides like Wrath of God or something. Engineer Plague is just always a constant hindrance for the deck. And I think you just need to play out the Siege Gang. 3. No, because that's only 4. Yeah, he's got to play out the land. That's where the sticking point is. But if he does that, he takes 4 damage, so he can't. He can play out the land and not the goblin, which is what's going to happen. Okay. Take 2. Drop to 3. Actually, all Chuck really needs to do is draw another Sulfuric Vortex, and he'd win. That might be the only real out here. Ooh, is that a rat? I think if Saul plays that, no, it's is it a green demon? Interesting. All right, morphed grinning demon. 3 cards in hand, goes to 2. Don't forget to draw your card. Yep, it's got to be a vortex. It's not a vortex. There's a land. I guess you could do it on your upkeep, couldn't you? Yeah, you could. Okay, so I think this is the plan. Sack the ringleader for mana. Play out the Siege Gang. Still keep 3 in hand. Saul takes 2 on his turn, and assuming the Siege Gang stays alive. Yep, sacking it to that. Assuming the Siege Gang stays alive, he can sack it in response to the trigger, having the mana to do so. Say go. So Saul needs to draw a removal spell here. Dropping to 1. Needs an edict or some piece of removal. That's a rack. That's not going to do it. There's still 3 cards in Chuck's hand. I think he's got it. Now, no, because Saul doesn't have 4 mana. He can't kill the Siege Gang. Yeah, Chuck's got it. Saul just making sure, but I think Chuck found the line. I think Saul knows that Chuck found the line. Just making sure. And people coming over to watch. Free foot shot for you folks who's wearing sandals. I guess it is still summer. Saul just making sure, I think at this point. He doesn't have anything for flashback. He doesn't have a removal spell. That's a grinning demon. Face down, I believe. And yeah, I don't think there's anything Saul can do. Chuck has this in the bag. Saul just gonna throw it down. Sure, I'll cast third rack, and that's going to be game number 2. All right, congrats to Chuck. Those were some incredibly close games. Finding the line there at the end to take it down. Deck honestly looks sweet. And good job, Saul. You played great. Just coming up a little short, which, you know, sometimes that's magic. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. We've got tons, months and months of pre-modern decks. Some really cool brews, some top tier decks, and everything in between. If you like the videos and you want to support the channel even more, there's a Patreon link in the video description below. That money goes towards gear upgrades, travel expenses, and of course, just making more videos. Thank you all. Catch you next time.